Welcome to the Freedom Chronicles.
Definitely an antisocial type.
Only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger.
Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
We got a loudspeaker here, and when we go into battle, we play music very loud.
With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Freedom Chronicles. I'm your host, Mike Imbasciani. Thank you for joining us. We are, of course, broadcasting from the Brian Chapman State Farm bunker right here in Southwest Florida. And like a good neighbor, Brian Chapman State Farm is there for all of the insurance needs that you have for your very own bunker. You can give this office a call at 941-625-9998 or visit the office at 2040 Tamiami Trail in Port Charlotte. And folks, it is President Trump's birthday. Happy birthday to Donald Trump. And if you like this shirt, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president. You too. Yeah, you too can get one of those shirts. You can check out the brand new Freedom Chronicles shop. Check out the link in the description or use this QR code that we put on the screen right here. And you too can get some fantastic Freedom Chronicles merch. And in addition to it being President Trump's birthday, it is also Flag Day. Yes. So we have our flag here. Look at that. Very nice. Okay. And then it's, upside down because we are in distress as a nation.
I also, did you see I got my K. Carl Smith shirt?
I saw that. I like that. Save America.
Save America.
What does it say? Yeah.
I did it once. I can do it again.
There you go. Frederick Douglass. We like it. Save America.
Yeah.
And it is also not only President Trump's birthday, it's Flag Day. It is also my cousin Alan's birthday over there. Cousin Alan over there in Arizona. Badass dude. I love the picture of him.
Cousin Al been over here before?
Yeah, you met him 2019? Just before COVID, just after COVID, I don't remember, but we have a
that
fun
all turns
picture
into kind of a blur.
I know. Yeah.
And then Ian hit us,
right?
And then time went into a warp again. So,
still, yes. But I have a fun picture of him, Ben, and we can pull that up, of holding his Winchester in front of his fake cannon on top of the mountain that he lives on in Arizona. There he is.
Yeah, that's right.
So happy birthday to cousin Alan. We love you, and I'm looking forward to seeing him over there in August. Well, folks, thank you for joining us on this show. We have a great show planned, and it's going to be an exclusive extra part of the show, a whole nother hour of the show that you can only get on the Locals app. So download the free Locals app or go to locals.com and become a member of the Freedom Chronicles local page. Just $5 a month. Use promo code FreedomCow. Get a whole bunch of cool exclusive stuff. Kenny in the Corner rants.
Yes.
Our bottom of the stack.
I got a couple
episodes.
Right?
Yeah, you got a couple rants. You're doing good. And episodes like this. So the first hour you will find everywhere you're finding this episode, but only the full 2-hour show will be available on the Locals page, so you don't want to miss it. And our guest today will have certainly a lot to talk about. Attorney for one of the Oathkeepers with the incident that happened there on January 6th. It is Scott Weinberg.
The rally that was going on.
Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. So first, give us your background and kind of tell us
Tell us all about
yourself. Yes.
Oh, I don't know if we have enough time. You want me to stare at this camera?
No, that one right there.
That one.
Yeah. There you go.
Obviously, I'm not well trained in media.
That's okay.
My background is not too complicated. I grew up just outside of Washington, D.C. and Chicago. Both my parents are criminal defense attorneys, so I kind of came by this honestly. My first memory is of my dad in Chicago getting a wad of cash from a gangbanger in Chicago. So I
want to do that.
Right? Yeah, right.
Well, it's funny. I wanted to coach football and teach history until I did that for one day, and I said, I can't do this. I can't get a real job, so I might as well become an attorney. And
there you go.
And here I am.
Right. Awesome.
I went to law school in Lansing, Michigan at Thomas Cooley, and then I moved to Miami, and 2009 hit. And the first job I got was on the West Coast, and the rest is history. I started working at the state attorney's office for about 14 months. I transferred over to Brown, Suarez, Rios, and Weinberg. I made partner. Now we're just called Suarez, Rios, and Weinberg because my partner, Chris Brown, is now a judge down in Naples.
Wow,
and
awesome. Fantastic.
Cool.
And we have offices from Naples all the way to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mainly Naples to Sarasota, and that's where most of our work is done.
Mhm.
So how did you come about? Now, did you offer your services to the January 6th defendant? Did the defendant contact you? Tell us how that whole process and how it played out.
Well, there's an old quote in the Bible: "If you cast your bread upon the waters, it'll come back to you." And when I first started as a defense attorney, I was really into gun rights and stand your ground. So I used to give speeches at NRA conventions, hopefully trying to get a lot of business. And I found that gun owners really don't commit a lot of crimes. So I never. So it took about 12 years until somebody who was a conservative heard about my skill as a criminal defense attorney and our belief in the Constitution. And that's how Mr. Marshall met myself, and that's how my firm got the case.
Right. And so you got this case defending. Now, he is a Charlotte County resident as well.
Yes, he's a Charlotte County resident. And, he had a couple of choices which attorneys to go with. When you're talking about federal court in D.C., it sounds intimidating until you actually get there. And, he decided to go with a local guy who has a lot of trial experience, which is myself. Federal court, there are a lot of attorneys who don't have that much trial experience. So in federal court, usually if the feds want you, they're going to get you. So 90% of that practice is plea bargaining. And here in Charlotte County and the surrounding counties, my law firm does go to trial quite a bit. In fact, I just rushed from a trial in DeSoto County to make it here to this appearance.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you making the time, man. And
for sure.
And so what did he do? What was he what was he accused of?
Start from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, that is definitely an interesting question. So, everybody has an opinion on January 6th. Every defendant has a different story. The situation that David got himself in, he joined a group called the Oathkeepers. And I think I've discussed this before, but the Oathkeepers as a whole was a decent group of people. The point of being an oath keeper is that you trust your oath to the Constitution, and their goal was to defend local neighborhoods. In fact, there's documented evidence of them defending people after the Ferguson riots back, I believe, in 14 or 16. They actually assisted, I believe, in the Bundy situation, trying to keep the peace there. And then they actually left because that situation was getting too, what they called, hot. So they have been basically a community action group with former military people and former police officers. So when 2020 happened and the country started to basically burn down, a lot of people without backgrounds in the military or the police joined the Oathkeepers because they thought it would be another layer of protection in case something bad happened in their neighborhood. So that's how a lot of these individuals who got wrapped up into this January 6th thing joined the group. Unfortunately, Stuart Rhodes was the head of the group, and like many
eye patch guy, right?
The eye patch guy.
Yeah, I think we have a picture of him too.
Yeah, if you could show a picture of him, he kind of looks like an 80s bad guy from a B movie.
Yeah, right.
Like Die Hard 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
And Stuart Rhodes, I believe his intentions probably were good from the beginning. He was a Yale graduate, and then, like most people who start running an organization, he started drinking his own Kool-Aid, believing he was more important than the organization. And of course, during the trial, we got to learn a lot about Mr. Rhodes. We got to learn a lot about his accounting practices, how he was sleeping with the female attorney that was supposed to be helping the Oathkeepers, how he was taking $100,000 in donations and spending $120 the next month.
Oh, that's
how
nice.
He was staying in luxury hotels, getting free tattoos, smoking doobies, all this kind of stuff that you would expect that the leader of a group wouldn't do. And then, frankly, what he did, and this is what I think is the most unforgivable, is that he sent men down to D.C.
Was he a veteran?
He was a veteran, but he wasn't in the military very long. And the rumor is that he shot out his own eye by accident.
Allegedly. I will add, folks, and as there is a lawyer present, everything discussed on this podcast is solely our opinion.
In his defense, he only shot out that eye when he found out it was on the left.
Oh, hey!
You like that one?
That was a good one.
I'll be here all night.
We like that one.
So Rhodes sends a lot of gentlemen. Trump made that December 19th tweet where he said it's going to be wild. And a lot of people took that as a call to Washington, D.C. And I believe Mr. Rhodes took it as well. And he sent a lot of inexperienced, undisciplined people to Washington, D.C. And that's pretty much how January 6th kind of blew up for the Oathkeepers. Now, obviously, I'm not a big fan of Mr. Rhodes. A lot of the trial I spent trashing Stuart Rhodes because I believe he deserved to be trashed. Without Mr. Rhodes, my client is at home relaxing with his family right now, and a lot of Floridians would be fine. So he convinced a lot of people to go, and they were unprepared, but he did not really have a plan to go into the Capitol. The way the government worked this case is they basically reverse engineered a conspiracy. So at every event, the Oathkeepers have something called a QRF, which is a quick reaction force. And that is basically they say it's for people to be ready to extricate people, or whatever that word is, to get people out of harm's way.
Exfil.
Exfil.
There you go.
Yeah.
But what you learn,
it's exfoliation.
In a circular motion.
Yeah.
Well, once you read hundreds of thousands of these messages from these individuals, you just learn that they're, and I don't mean any disrespect to them, but they're all just a bunch of morons. They don't know what they're talking about. They talk military talk when it's not appropriate. They say, "What's the intel on lunch?"
So they were wannabes.
Should I stand down? I'll give you a perfect example. I even found my favorite text message from the Oathkeepers trial. One of the other individuals involved with the Oathkeepers sent a message to Stuart Rhodes 3 days before January 6th, and it reads, "Sir, Ed Vallejo of Arizona in Tennessee, with cadre requesting coordinates to the Allied encampment outside D.C. boundaries to rendezvous. Please respond ASAP for the Republic."
For the Republic.
So, and that was from a 70-year-old man whose job was a cook for camp. So, they used a lot
They
of
just like using the language, and they don't realize it gets used against them.
It was basically a group of guys playing Call of Duty in real life.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
and
these
that
guys
all got used against them.
when these guys brought all these guns to DC, none of them really had the stones to actually take them into DC.
No, they did. They left him in the hotel, right?
They left him in the hotel, and the reason why a lot of them brought their guns is they were just bragging to each other who had the nicer AR-15. So my client said, "Whoa, the Daniel Defense," they were talking about, should we camo the guns? He's like, "Well, my Daniel Defense label is too pretty." So, the way I would
That is
describe
true.
it, and I'm sure all of these listeners know about guns, but the way I tried to describe it to the DC jurors is, gun culture for men is like purse culture for women.
Yes.
A lot of it is about the labels, about the type of gun.
You kind of use the penis defense, right?
Yeah.
Yes, mine is bigger.
Yeah. Look, I'd use any defense if it worked.
Ayo.
So as long as it worked and the check cleared, I'm
There you go.
Exactly.
So, that's how these individuals really reverse engineered it, because the government and the judge and the jury, the worst facts of the case were the guns in Virginia.
Yeah, they blew that up.
Yeah. And you know what? And if I was the U.S. attorney, I would have used that as well. And, the judge in his sentencing, and I cannot say anything bad about the judge when it comes to sentencing, because he did for what our clients were convicted of, he gave fair sentences to my client, in my opinion. Of course, I don't think David should have done a day, but based on the convictions that we got, getting the lowest on the conspiracy was kind of a win. The guns were the big thing. DC gun culture, they don't understand guns. They think that if a pistol is on the table, it will literally jump up and bite you like a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
And that was a tough thing to overcome. And I tried to explain it to the jury, and I did, some cute analogies. And I cross-examined FBI agents who didn't really know anything about guns, and then a couple that did. And, at the end of the day, trying a case in DC with these defendants, there was no way we could get a win. A trial like this ends up being what defense attorneys call a slow plea.
Yeah.
And I think without the trial, these men didn't get, at least the lower level people would not have gotten the what I consider good sentences that they got, because Judge Mehta was able to actually see the truth of the case. So every time I made a joke that made the jury laugh, I believe about how these guys were kind of pathetic, and I called them Meal Team 6 and the Gravy Seals.
That's the best. I want a shirt
seals,
that says that.
I love that.
Because
Don't be a Gravy Seal.
There was a video that they used, and my client wasn't there, of a training in Sarasota, where these Oathkeepers with Kelly Meggs and some of the other Oath Keepers were out shooting at a gun range.
Hut.
Yeah, and they were, and it was literally a joke. I mean, they were like a bunch of big fat old guys falling over themselves on this obstacle course. And there was a gun expert who was just a guy with a long beard, drinking a Monster, smoking a cigarette. And then the judge used everything that guy said as like, well, the firearms expert says, oh, rifles are only offensive weapons and they're not defensive weapons. And, this is just some Joe Schmo trying to make a buck.
Yeah.
So that was part of the problem. So when I say they reverse engineered it, there was no plan to go into the Capitol. Nobody told them to go into the Capitol. But the fact that they went into the Capitol, they reverse engineered it and said they brought the guns because they were planning on going to the Capitol.
It was a violent insurrection.
Waiting for the whole riot to pop off.
Right. Well, that's the synopsis. Let's go a level deeper. So
Sure.
Your client went into the Capitol, and how many were on trial? There were eight on trial, correct? And you said they divvied it up into two groups.
There were 9 on trial. They
9.
did 5 and then 4.
5 and 4. Okay.
The first 5 were Stuart Rhodes, Kelly Meggs, and a couple other of the low-level people. And then the second 4 were just, mid-range, low-level.
Yeah.
And then, so for your client, what were the charges that were brought against him?
My client was charged with seditious conspiracy, conspiracy to obstruct Congress, obstruction of justice, and destruction of property, and a couple others. At the end of the day, the real dangerous charge was the seditious conspiracy,
Right.
Which is a charge that really isn't used a lot. And frankly, all of these cases that use seditious conspiracy are probably going to end up before the Supreme Court because that statute is very vague.
Interesting. And you said he went into the Capitol and was in there for 11 minutes?
I think it was 11 minutes and 5 seconds. So he walks into the Capitol in what the government said was a stack. So everybody's seen that famous photo of the gentleman dressed in military garb walking up the stairs with one hand on each other's back. And the government kept calling that the stack. In reality, when I spoke to the defendants, they were just doing that so they wouldn't get lost, and it was something that they had learned in 5th grade. that is literally what the
it wasn't the tap on the shoulder. All right, go clear the next room.
Here. Let's just hold on together for security.
Buddy up, stay with your buddy.
I mean, you're talking about a group of men who had not met until that moment. So my client did not meet an Oath Keeper until like that day.
Wow.
And so same with a couple other people. So it was really the blind leading the blind, and unfortunately.
And you said he wasn't even a member of the Oath Keepers that long.
No, he joined September 28th. The first time he ever spoke to an Oath Keeper was, I believe, December 19th or December 20th.
Wow.
On the group chat.
Now, was he apprehended, cuffed, arrested, and thrown in pre-trial detainment like a lot of the J6 people up in D.C.?
No, he was not. Luckily,
Good.
By the time they found, they figured out who he was. He had contacted me. I had contacted the government. I had, tried to sweet talk the government to give him a chance, give him a break. And then I listened to David's story. And, 99% of the time I say never talk to the police or to the feds. Situation like this, they were going to come at him one way or another. And I believe David's story. I still believe David's story. So I said, your only chance of getting out of this is to tell him the story. And he told him exactly the truth. But because he was an Oath Keeper, they weren't going to let him go. So if David had just went by himself, he walks away with a misdemeanor trespass. But because he was part of the group, unfortunately, and this is a lesson for everybody, if you're part of a group, you can be held responsible for other members' actions.
Yeah.
Which is not fair.
No, it's not.
That's the world that we're living in now. So you just have to have your eyes wide open.
The world of commies.
You have to have your eyes wide open. I mean, we see, look, say what you want about Donald Trump, but you see that he's being charged with something that other people have not been charged with.
Political persecution is what we're experiencing here in the fall of our nation.
There's a famous line by Joseph Beria, I think, from the KGB. He says, "You find me the man, and I will find you the crime."
Oh yeah, exactly.
So
that's what they're doing. That's what Jackoff Smith is been assigned to do.
Well, and that's what one thing we'll go away from the January 6th thing for a moment. But what do you think when you're seeing that Trump get indicted on these 37 charges, facing 400 years in prison?
Well, look, I'm like most conservatives. I have very mixed feelings about Donald Trump. I think the fact that he's been indicted in New York and in Florida is ridiculous. Obviously, Trump doesn't help himself by doing silly things. It's kind of like that movie Animal House. If I was his lawyer, I'd tell him he was on double secret probation and he needed to be very careful. But everybody knows Trump doesn't listen to his lawyers or to anybody, frankly. Obviously, no one's above the law, but the fact that they're charging him when, Hillary Clinton's emails and all these other people.
And everything
And
coming
he
out
really,
with Biden right now.
And again, when you look at the backstory and when you look at the semantics that the DOJ is playing with what they consider, I mean, they're not even actually identifying what these secret documents were that everybody already knows.
Right.
Nara knew. Everybody knows, So again, I look forward to it playing out.
Well, I think people
it's
are
not
now
hurting him.
People are now realizing something I've been saying for years as a criminal defense attorney, that actually the most powerful person in your area is the prosecutor, because they have prosecutorial discretion.
Yeah.
So if somebody, let's say, you live in, Oklahoma, and somebody wants to go after you, if that local prosecutor wants to go after you, you have serious problems.
That's true. But the maniacal, almost psychotic way that Jack Smith has been doing this, he's already had several reversals in his career. He's not a popular guy by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, it's better to, in their opinion, it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And
but you just look at how he's doing it. He's shredding the rule of law, in my opinion. I don't know how you see this as a lawyer,
of course,
but to me, he's shredding the rule of law.
I think that now the crusade to get Trump has almost gotten to a religious fervor where they are going to get him no matter what. Obviously, Trump doesn't help himself, but I don't think, you give me a law book, I could find something that you did wrong.
Yeah, right,
and
exactly.
that's just the nature of our country. Yeah. That's the nature of laws. That's part of the reason why we had a revolution all those years ago. And it is a very scary time. The only thing that can solve this problem is a Miami jury. Jury that sees this case for what it is and finds him not guilty. I mean, frankly, if I tried the January 6th case, and I think every January 6th lawyer would agree, if we try that case just 20 miles over the bridge in either Maryland or Washington, D.C., we would have got a not guilty on every case. I've never had a case where I felt I've won every single day. Every single day we poked a giant hole in the government's case. Every single day we showed something that the FBI did wrong. And at the end of the day, the jurors just weren't going to have it.
Yeah. Well, so talk about that. Talk about what it was like going through that jury, because it's still jury selection.
Right.
Well, jury selection was, it was a very interesting process.
When you're getting 100% of the same ideological people.
Well, and that's funny.
Through the door.
They fill out a questionnaire where, and I will give it to them, most of them were very honest. And of 150 jurors that filled out the questionnaire, 148 were Democrats registered.
Nice.
And 2 of them checked the wrong box. and that's not a joke.
Yeah.
Like literally the 2 people that were Republicans were not Republicans. They had checked the wrong box. And so what happens is there's a giant form and they fill it out. And the buzzwords, and I dealt with this today in my trial, is can you be fair and impartial? Mm-hmm. If you ever want to get out of jury duty, and I don't recommend getting out of jury duty.
Lethal injection.
If you say you can't be fair and impartial, they can't put you on the jury.
Yeah.
So I'd say about 70% of these people check the box. They cannot be fair and impartial to the January 6ers.
Just the immediately they put
because
that
the
down.
media has already tainted everything.
Yeah. Well, and let's be honest, a lot of these people in Washington, D.C., and the entire city was put on a curfew that day. So they're all technically victims,
pissed,
quote unquote. And some of them, there was a lot of tear gas that day, which was not let off by the January 6ers.
No.
But there was a lot of tear gas. So a lot of people were, quote unquote, victims of the day.
Right.
So, and then you have to think they live in that city.
Yeah.
They live there. So let's say they wanted to find my client not guilty. You think they could go back to their, their nonprofit organization and say, yeah, I walked what the media has called a giant white supremacist group.
Meals on Wheels passing up your house.
Yep.
So it was just an impossible place to get a jury. I mean, we had an individual who was very well educated up there, and the judge had asked him, well, sir, if I ask you to be fair and impartial, will you? And of course, when the judge asks you that, you say yes.
Oh, yes, sir.
I mean, you're talking, they brought one juror in at a time. You're talking a giant courtroom, probably like the size of a cathedral in Europe.
Bigger than this?
Oh, much
Bigger than the bunker?
I'd say it's about 3 times the size of this bunker.
Wow.
Which is this
Intimidating.
is a big bunker. Very big bunker.
Very intimidating.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that has to be intimidating.
Yeah, and they, the judge, very nice man. He's got a very soft voice, and he told everybody, if I ask you to be fair and impartial, will you? And of course, they all said yes. One individual, he got to ask maybe a couple of questions. We said, do you know who Alex Jones is? Because, some of the guys texted about Alex Jones in the 100,000 messages, and the guy says, no, I don't think I've ever heard of Alex Jones. So I Google him real quick. We look up his Facebook. Yesterday, he posted on Facebook, I hope Alex Jones burns in hell. This guy is the biggest SOB ever. So we just turned the laptop around and we said, hey, bud.
Isn't this you?
Yeah. It looks a lot like you.
Then he says, oh, that Alex Jones.
No, that guy.
Yeah.
So, I've been talking.
Right.
I've been talking to one of the lawyers on the case, and we think a couple of people got on the jury by not answering those questions truthfully, because
they're looking for street cred.
You're talking hundreds of years of 100 years of legal experience. We had that jury. We had them nodding their heads in closing argument, which is usually a very good sign.
But it didn't matter. Yeah.
And then 3 days later, the 4-person starts looking at us, and she looks at us, with one of those looks, like we're gonna get you, and found them all guilty. So that was the jury selection. There's so many things in this case which are very frustrating, and I think the average person needs to know it. I mean,
first the venue,
right?
Shouldn't
well, right? I
shouldn't
mean,
you have
that's
been
the whole
able to,
thing. Being in DC,
of course, they shot that down.
Well, this is kind of one of my favorite things I've been seeing on TV recently. Now that Trump is in Miami, and then there's a conservative, judge.
Yeah, they drag out the magistrate.
Right. Everybody wants to change venue now. So it's the same political pundits that were on CNN and MSNBC saying that my client could get a fair trial in DC and the change of venue should be denied, who are now advocating that Trump's venue change. They should change Trump's venue because it's not fair to the government. So,
same for the New York case,
right?
For Trump,
Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, in the law should be the law, and it just depends on whose ox is being gored, what side people are on a certain issue.
Yeah.
Frankly, everybody deserves a right to a fair and impartial jury, and I don't think we got that in Washington D.C. I don't think any January 6er could get that in Washington, D.C. It would be like having...
If they were fair and impartial, these guys wouldn't be held, wouldn't be having the crap beat out of them, wouldn't be starved.
In the Gitmo style.
Actually more like a Soviet gulag style. These guys, most of them misdemeanors, they should be out on bail,
And that is a big problem. Lots of these men are in custody and they should have been released.
You murder somebody in Chicago, you're out on no cash bail the next morning.
Yeah.
Well,
guys,
and then not charged.
And then he got away.
Well, I mean, let's use Stuart Rhodes as an example. He was out walking around for 12 or 18 months. They finally decide to arrest him, and then the DOJ says this man's too dangerous to be walking out on the street. So since January 6th until he was arrested, he was walking around on the street, not hurting a fly.
Yeah.
But then once the DOJ arrests him, that's when he's too dangerous. And that's just a disingenuous argument. If you thought somebody was dangerous, you should have arrested him and put him in custody right away. Right away. And the reason why they put people in custody, because it gets them to plea. It gets them to flip. Nobody likes being in jail. Jail is a terrible place, especially in Washington, D.C. And
apparently.
The only good thing I would say about any of this is that now conservatives realize that jail should not be a place where you just lock them away, feed them bread and water, and throw away the key. Everybody deserves human rights in a jail, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, communists, whatever. Everybody deserves those rights. Now, I think people are seeing that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, not enough.
No.
And apparently
because nobody's talking about it.
Apparently not enough of our elected representatives give a crap about it.
Right, because it's always Marjorie Taylor Greene who's dragging people to see the people that have been that are still in custody that way.
Well, what do you guys think about it politically speaking on that front? Because I've thought about the January 6ers and, politically speaking, does it help any Republicans really to back them up?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
From a rule of law perspective, from a innocent until proven guilty, when we're looking at most of these being misdemeanors, and these guys have been locked up since,
and
a
not
lot
only
of them
that,
have been locked up since the week after January 6th. and they're still there.
And
it's
they're
BS.
withholding evidence, and that's something I want to talk about.
It's-
Basically, the mounds of evidence they gave you to go through. But when you see Tucker Carlson being the one coming out with all the videotape of what's happening, and you have, and I'd like to talk about the Buffalo guy, Jacob there. Allegedly, they said, well, he was released early due
Buffalo
to
guy.
the video.
Don't you mean the QAnon shaman?
Of course, yes.
Say his name.
Well, speaking of evidence, I'm still getting discovery, and the case has been over for 3 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they still send me discovery. It's
leaking
like,
it.
Oh, by the
slowly.
way.
By the way.
no, we
Yeah.
complied. Oh, you don't need it now.
Mhm.
they gave us, I
Sorry.
think, 11 tetrabytes, which is,
Insane
a
amount. Yeah.
million, a couple, 11 million documents or something like that.
It was 14,000 hours of video in there.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean,
It was in those terabytes. that
We
you
had lots of video. I think it was like 660 hours. I don't know. I had a bunch of interns doing all that stuff.
Wow.
I had to,
Yeah.
I had to make a living.
Got
So
anything you can,
I mean,
send
look,
our way?
at the end of, no, I cannot send it to your way. I do not want to end up in
Want a
federal
scoop?
prison. But at the end of the day, my client was in the Capitol for 11 minutes.
Right.
So all I needed to do is find that 11 minutes, which
Yeah.
we found pretty quickly. And it just shows him doing nothing. But, the government basically.
Penetration, however slight.
Right.
Is frowned upon.
Well, that's a different
Even though it's the people's house.
That's,
Yes.
that's a different charge.
Yes.
Cannot-
That's a different charge.
It's the UCMJ.
I do those kind of cases too. So,
Anyway.
So,
But again, yeah, it's the people's house.
right.
Our tax dollars pay for it. Kind of.
I mean, look,
kind of hard to even go after the trespassing, particularly when you have evidence of the cops opening the door. But again, it's their house; they're in charge, so they're the Nazis. Screw the rule of law, screw the Constitution. You're all guilty. We're going to throw you in there, and occasionally, they're going to drag these cases out. Weren't you saying that they're getting ready to arrest another 1,000, or they've already started?
Yeah, they're going to keep arresting people for the next
Rat
3 to 4
bastards.
years. 3 to 4 years. Now, I think an interesting thing about January 6th is you have to remember the climate of the country at that time.
I do.
It was so long ago that 2023 seems a lot different than that. I mean, we had just watched an entire country basically burn.
Yeah.
With rioters not going to jail.
Right.
So I believe a lot of the January 6ers were probably emboldened to go into the Capitol figuring, well, I'm not going to damage anything.
We'll be fine.
And nobody else has been arrested for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a mostly peaceful protest, not to steal CNN's quote.
Fiery but peaceful.
Yeah, fiery but peaceful.
And they thought they weren't going to get in trouble. And what happened is they kind of did it in the wrong town and they exposed themselves. And I think the Democrats.
Well, and they did
used
some
it.
stupid stuff, and I'm not saying that they should be punished for vandalism and trespassing. But again, misdemeanor trespassing and vandalism in today's world equates to actually 0 jail time at all.
Yeah.
But yet they're being persecuted. So it's a political persecution. It's not just law and order, because they would have, at the very least, they should be let out on time served at this point.
I agree. I think people that didn't do violence on January 6th probably should have all walked away with a misdemeanor and been let out. I do. And, I'm a defense attorney.
Who's did
so
the violence? Where's the violence here? Because
Well,
the only violence I'm seeing is coming from the cops.
Well, there was a lot of violence by the cops, but they're in the tunnel. I think there was, with the Proud Boys, there was some violence. And I can't deny that there was some violence by the January 6th rioters. I mean, the only thing I would say, and I always take the opposite side of somebody because that's what I do for a living.
Sure.
If it was Democrats and Antifa storming the Capitol, every one of us would be saying they should mow them down with an M60 machine gun.
Allegedly,
Well, no,
folks.
I mean, come on, that's what
No.
that's
I don't know about that.
That's
Yeah.
what conservatives would be saying if it was the other group.
That's too
storming the
that's too
Capitol.
quick and easy.
Well, I just think it's important to have perspective.
I agree.
If it
Yeah,
wasn't,
I agree,
If it
yeah.
wasn't our
Well,
quote
and-
unquote guys,
And that's why
We'd want
I
But
like-
again, if we were talking about Antifa and the Ku
Nothing
Klux
would have
Alphabet
happened.
Clan doing the same thing, they would have actually done something to justify being in jail.
Right.
They would have thrown the Molotovs.
Right.
They would
Well,
have.
and that's why I like Trump's response. When asked about it in his town hall, Trump said he would have to look at the cases and pardon the right people. Because
Yeah.
he said if you punch a cop or, you actually caused violence, That's a problem.
Yeah.
It is a problem.
It is.
And nobody's saying
But
that.
again, it doesn't
And then you have
justify
Pence
3 years
on
in
the
jail
other
with
side.
no trial.
No, that's right. It's innocent until proven guilty, and go through the actual law.
Yeah.
But then you have Pence who says, I'm not going to pardon any of them. And I picked that picture on purpose with, the little fly because
on
you know
the
what
side.
flies are attracted to. And
Can you figure we're not a fan of
Yes.
Mr. Pence?
Does anybody know why Pence is running for president? He
Yeah.
has zero
Well, he wrote a
chance.
book, and once you write the
Right.
book,
It's the book.
you
You
have
gotta-
to. You
yes.
got the advance, so you kind of have to
Yes.
run your.
But Pence said not only is he not pardoning, but charged and to the fullest extent of the law all the way. Really? Everybody? Give me a break. That's not fairness. That's not actual law.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think, Mike Pence, I guess he is trying to sell a book because he's got no chance. I mean, does anybody know? Call in or send an email if you know one person who's going to vote for Mike Pence. I do not
right.
know one person.
Did he let you know that he's a Christian?
Yes.
Oh, there's that.
He
that's
wears
he's a
that on his
Christian.
sleeve.
He
It's like
likes
some
the
sort
Bible.
of you can't criticize me because I'm one of you.
Yes.
I'm a Christian.
Yes.
Just like you.
Just like you.
Yeah. Sorry. He's a
I
charlatan.
care about policy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes,
What are you going to
exactly.
do? Are you going to pardon these people?
What's
who are
your
unfairly
national
charged?
economic policy?
Right.
Yes.
You could be Attila the Hun. If you're going to
Yeah.
pardon these people, I'll vote for you.
Get out. Yeah, you
Not
getting us
really,
out of
just-
getting us out of
yes.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Literally, that's the big thing. But talking about New York, well, also, first I got this:
What is that?
the lectern guy. Everybody
Oh,
remembers the
yeah.
lectern guy. We have the picture of the
Hi.
lectern guy.
What's that? Look at me.
Yeah, look at me. Well, he tweeted yesterday a video of somebody cutting off his ankle monitor because he said months spent restricted to the Middle District of Florida, 29 days monitored by the feds, 888 hours spent in prison for a misdemeanor, 1,800 trolling the government, priceless, free at last is obvious. House arrest is over. So that's very nice to hear. And I
Yeah,
love in his
it is.
Twitter bio, it says the lectern guy, interim speaker of the house.
So you've got. Do you have some other J6?
I have one other January 6th case pending.
Okay.
Are you
Obviously,
as,
I don't want to talk too much about
Oh,
it.
yeah,
sure,
that's
but
fine.
are you as optimistic?
Yes. See, he was not part of a group. So
that's good.
Oh, good.
it's not going to be a trial. We're walking away with a misdemeanor.
Mhm.
He did try to render aid to Miss Babbitt after she was shot by the police officer. So he's actually a very, well-respected individual. And I don't want to use his name because I don't want his name out there.
No problem.
But he's a very good guy.
Good.
That's
And
nice.
and frankly,
Local?
David's a very good guy from the
Is he a local
Oathkeepers.
guy?
He is not local. He's from some other state. California.
California.
big
California. Yeah.
It's a big state.
It's
So,
a big
yeah.
state. He's a very nice individual.
Good.
He heard about my work up in Washington, D.C., and that's why he decided to hire me.
Very good.
Awesome.
Well, I want to get to our Patriot and Trader of the Week. But before we do that, what was the conviction that was brought down?
So he was my client was convicted of 4 counts. The big one was seditious conspiracy and conspiracy to obstruct Congress. We got a not guilty on the obstruction of justice when he allegedly deleted the app that they were communicating on from his phone, and we got a not guilty of damage to property. When it comes to obstruction of justice, the government can charge that for anything.
Right.
Sure.
So it's kind of like the catch-all that they use.
Yeah.
And luckily, the jury found him not guilty of that. However, just because you're found not guilty in a federal trial does not mean they can't use that charge in your sentencing. So the government filed it was like 200 pages of just like a memo. And they were saying because they proved the charge by a preponderance of the evidence, my client's score sheet would go up and the points would go up. So when we finally went to the sentencing hearing, the government was asking the judge for 10 years. And the judge gave David 3.
Well,
So
all things considered,
Best you could hope for.
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a win, I guess.
Yeah.
And the
Look,
head of the Oathkeepers got 18
he got 18.
years.
Yeah. I mean, he got 18, and he's going to be doing a hard time.
Yeah.
And while I said I don't like Mr. Rhodes, 18 years is a long time for an individual who, number one, never told anybody to go into the Capitol, didn't go into the Capitol himself. And then when they came out of the Capitol, the first thing he said was that was stupid. So it's hard to find him guilty of a conspiracy. He might be guilty of, leading his men astray, being an idiot, spending a lot of money, having inexperienced people show up places.
Mhm.
Those men did not do what he wanted them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, has some very good lawyers from Dallas who are appealing the case, and they're working on it. I mean, I am not a big, the appeal is going to work. On a case like this, I think appeals will actually get us some results.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
What can you speak to how many FBI informants were embedded around? Did that come up at all?
That is a very interesting question. There were informants, I believe. The court would not let us explore that issue.
Oh, really?
In some of those situations. So, a lot of what happens in a trial happens before the trial. You say, I want to mention this. The government says, I want to mention that. And then we fight about it.
Yeah.
And that theory of the case was not admissible in this trial. There was another attorney on the first set of Oathkeepers trials who worked really hard at getting this evidence in, and he's still researching it, but it was not allowed to be used at trial.
Interesting.
And then, at the end of the day, once your client is found guilty of something, whether you think he did it or not,
it's too late.
It's too late.
All you can do is appeal. Really.
And I went to the judge at sentencing, and I said, why my client is different from everybody else, the good facts for him while accepting responsibility. And I think the judge saw that we were being genuine and we made some good arguments, and he got the lowest of anybody in the group.
Good.
But, at the end of the day, I always joke, it's like
3
bragging about scoring a touchdown in the Super Bowl when you lose.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
We're the Denver Broncos and they're the Niners. 3 years is a long time. For the charges, it's not a long time. I mean, there are guys in Florida doing more time for that for a couple of grams of meth. Oh, yeah. So at the end of the day, we're still talking about people's lives, but in the
and where's he going to do his time?
Well, we asked him to do his time somewhere in Florida at a nice club fed type place. But, federal prison is not what people think about on TV. If you're in minimum security, it's not a dangerous place.
Pine
it's
Lodge
not like
Correctional
the TV show
Facility.
Oz. Even Florida prisons, it's not like the TV show Oz.
Don't drop the soap.
It's not, full of crazy gangs. Now, if you go to, maximum security, then you need to
Walla Walla State Pen.
Yeah, then you need to be very careful.
Yes.
Then you need to be very careful.
That's where my cousin works.
Nice.
Okay. I thought it was in there.
No, man, you got all of them today, buddy.
One cousin was he was the head of their little police force in there.
Okay.
Nice.
The head of their, what do they call it? Interdiction team.
Okay.
For a long time, and now my cousin Mike is actually a nurse that works in the.
They could have used him up in Washington. A lot of the officers on this case, and now the case is over. There was a gentleman. He's like 7 foot tall, about 450 pounds.
Jeez.
And he gave his victim impact statement, and nobody ever hit him, nobody ever touched him, and he cried during his victim impact statement, saying how scared he is.
Wow.
About
He's taking acting classes.
Yeah, I think he wrote a book.
He does a little community theater on the side.
Yeah, he wrote a book, and I'm looking at this guy, and he looks like a left tackle, and he's crying. And then this other cop who's...
Did you get to cross at all?
No, you can't do that in a sentencing.
Oh, bummer.
You got to be like, oh, no, I feel so bad for you.
It's the... Okay.
So this other officer who looked like he was in great shape, he started crying. And then a 21-year-old staffer got up there, a female, who talked about how she had to run and they were chasing her and she locked herself in the closet and all this other stuff. She didn't cry one bit.
Nice.
One bit. So,
yeah, of course.
I think,
that's our world today.
Sometimes people are trying to...
drinking that almond milk.
Yeah, they're
getting all that
trying
estrogen.
to get the disability. Now, there was a couple of cops that I'll be honest that they were straight up guys and they were, they did a little bit of fighting in the Capitol, and they had a right to be that upset.
Yeah.
Some of them, but other of them, I mean, it's kind of like it's like a fireman complaining that he's putting out a fire. Like, this is your job.
It's your job.
It was a bunch of young in shape guys with batons beating up mostly older people.
Yeah, old ladies.
I mean, in Florida, if that happened in Charlotte County, they'd be like, "Let's gear up." They love that stuff. That's what they became cops for.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a lot more to talk about in the local segment. Let's pop over. We got our Patriot and Trader of the Week. Then we're going to have our music segment. And then, folks, don't forget, go over to Locals. Watch the full 2 hours. Full 2 hours. We have a lot more details we're going to get into. Join the Locals community. Use that QR code. Use the description use the link down in the description. Join the Locals community. $5 a month. Use promo code FreedomCal for $1 free month. So, Scott, who's your Patriot of the week?
Patriot of the week is, I think the Patriot of the week has to be Byron Donalds.
Yes.
Yeah,
very good.
I like Byron. We love Byron.
Byron Donalds, I actually had the pleasure of meeting him once when I was in Washington, D.C. And he has done so much for Southwest Florida. And he is the one on television every day, on CNN, on Fox News, fighting the good fight and letting people that don't really hear the correct side of an issue, the issue. So, a couple of weeks ago, he was on CNN just crushing it. Recently, I've seen his Twitter and everything that he's doing. I think he is definitely the Patriot of the week. He is fighting for justice, and I think he's fighting for the rule of law. And I think we need to be really proud that he is almost a local here in Charlotte County.
Yeah.
But he is a Southwest Florida person, and he
fantastic
brings he brings a lot of good light onto this area.
Yeah.
And I think he's fighting for justice.
Definitely. Good. Very good. Ken, who is your Patriot of the week?
I'm trying to, I forgot his name. He's the guy that choked out the dude on the train.
Oh, yeah.
Neely?
No,
Neely's the
Neely
one who died.
he's the chokey.
He's the chokey.
Daniel Penny.
Yes. That's it. Daniel Penny. He's Patriot of the week. He the guy was just doing what anyone would do. And if you look at a lot of people had video of it. He was threatening people. He was threatening women. Sorry. That it's a travesty what's happening to him.
Yes.
And it's only because he's a white Marine that they're doing it to
Yeah,
him.
and they're charging him. They're not, the other two who were black.
The two black guys that
helping
were assisting him.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Whereas, let's look at George Floyd. And I'm still saying that Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. Yeah. But look, the cops who didn't even touch George Floyd, they're doing time right now. But these two guys, well, because they were black and they helped, and
my whole point, and Scott, we can kind of get into this, I think, a little more in the local segment, but between Daniel Penny, what they're doing, going after Trump, all these indictments, and the January 6th people, it's to scare people into just standing by, let things happen, because the government can and will
that
go
crap
after
isn't going to happen down here in Florida.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry. that wouldn't have he would not have been arrested.
He would not have been arrested
in Florida.
That's for sure. I think, I don't even think this is a right-left issue. I think this is a sane, common sense person issue versus an insane and people that don't use common sense. And how do we change what's going on across the country? And I think the answer is for people with common sense to go to law school and become prosecutors and defense attorneys. But you have to have common sense. You can't just believe right or left. You have to really want to follow the law, and that would prevent a lot of these issues.
I agree.
And it's my Patriot of the week goes out to Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's
Vivek. Say it right.
Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's doing very well. I think he will eventually, if he especially performs well in a debate, especially against Tiny D, I think he will surpass DeSantis in the polls. And I like this tweet that he had today, which was truth. 1, God is real. 2, there are 2 genders. 3, human flourishing requires fossil fuels. 4, reverse racism is racism. 5, an open border is no border. 6, parents determine the education of their children. 7, the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. 8, capitalism lifts people up from poverty. 9, there are 3 branches of the U.S. government, not 4. And 10, the U.S. Constitution is the strongest guarantor of freedoms in history. Very well said. And it starts with truth. And he's been wearing a hat and having signs in front of his lectern that say truth.
I like him. Like I said,
what we need.
He's too young. He's too fresh on the scene. Not enough people know him. But I like what he has to say.
Yeah,
I really do.
Scott, who is your traitor of the week?
Well, I don't want to call anybody a traitor outright. Hypothetically
speaking, of course,
it's gotta
strictly
be,
your opinion,
it's,
sir.
It's got to be Jack Smith.
Oh,
I know, I stole mine. I mean,
you can double up.
There's been a lot of special prosecutors over the years. There's been lots of people, like Mueller sat around for 3 years, and then the other one for Clinton, and the Whitewater guy, and over and over again. And usually what they do is they drag out an issue for years, and then they say, well, there might be something, but we're not going forward based on the good of the country, which is kind of what happened with Hillary Clinton and her emails.
The Comey, yeah.
You know, she was guilty. It was obvious. And he said, you know what? It's not good to arrest the person running for president right now. And frankly, I kind of agree with that. The problem is that's got to cut both ways. And, you know, whether the allegations against Trump are real or not, the fact that they're indicting somebody who is now the front runner, even though I support DeSantis, even though Trump's the front runner, to do that in this country is a little bit banana republic-ish. And it's setting a precedent.
They'll go after DeSantis in the same fashion, you know, and you know, so I really that DeSantis is Trump without the baggage. Well, they'll throw all that baggage on DeSantis as soon as they get rid of Trump, and that anybody thinks otherwise is very naive.
Yes.
Well, you saw what
they're already trying to do to him.
That crazy woman called him the head of the Klan or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, look at Gavin Newsom wants him arrested for kidnapping.
Well, you know, unfortunately, I think that if this keeps going with the legal system like this, you're going to have something called like a soft civil war where there's not there's not going to be violence.
Oh, yes, there will.
I don't believe in violence. I think what will happen is you'll have a governor issuing a warrant for a governor.
Oh, yeah.
And we just kind of ignore the rule of law, and then Florida does its own thing. California does its own thing. And that's not what this country needs.
No.
This country needs us to all unite.
Yeah. But how does that happen? How do you think that happens now? I mean, because you've got to see the huge Grand Canyon of a chasm between half the nation.
Here's what I'll say. Whenever I was in D.C. and I went out and I talked to a person from D.C., if I could talk to them for 2 minutes, they would realize that people from Florida are not the monsters that we are. And
Florida man.
Well, we see that too. We've had friends come down from up north, and they're like amazed.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it's like, what, were you living in the Soviet Union? What, don't you watch TV?
Well, I mean,
they do watch TV. It's people telling them Florida's dangerous.
Well, look,
You know?
if you're just like a normal Joe Schmo punching in a 9 to 5 up in New York, and you watch CNN every day, you would think Florida was a hellhole of epic proportions. And that is not the truth. So what happens is on Twitter, on social media, everybody is to the extremes. Yeah. And what happens is whatever media you consume, you believe that it is that extreme. When in reality, if we actually sat down, had a beer, had a meal, people will realize that we have more in common than we don't.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I think that's what we really need to do is somehow get people together. Maybe do like a Florida exchange program.
There you go.
And, I ain't going up to the north no more.
It's
too cold.
Bring all blue-haired people down to the tiki bar for a little bit. Maybe
make them watch a Trump rally.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, folks, I will share my Trader of the Week in the local segment. We've got to get to the music segment before we get over to locals. But folks, if you're watching this on Rumble, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That's what helps the most. Drop a comment down below and share it with your friends. Share the show with your friends. If you're watching this on YouTube, do the same thing. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends. BitChute, Brighteon, Spotify, all that good stuff. Share it around, and that's what helps us out. And go check out the merch. You know, pick up your shirt. Got a bunch of great merch. The Get Loud Locally Freedom Cow, some great JFK quotes. Who was a Democrat, you know? And we got the Trump. Happy birthday to Trump. Flag Day. Good stuff. Oh, yeah. Head over to locals for the rest of the show. Enjoy the end of the show, which will be the music segment. And we'll see you over on locals. All right. We got a couple more.
Once upon a time, down on 47th Street, I met a fine chick, tried to knock her off her feet. Now all alone, I thought she was playing, and didn't know that was a real sugar man. But she fooled me, yeah, she fooled me that time. I thought she was just a dumb girl. On the run, 'cause I gave her a little money. We had a lot of fun. At that time, thought she didn't know it, I had another chick stashed behind the closet door.
You're watching Conservative Television of America, working hard to stick socialism where the sun don't shine.